So we don't know what the title of this sequel to Comic Book Babylon is yet, but for those who have not watched the other conversations I've had with Cliff, you are like a tireless advocate for creators' rights, and more importantly, I think rigid creators. Uh, so we were going to start, I think, by talking about Dean McGregor, because I believe that your book will be like at least by creator, sometimes how you've had to intervene. Uh, and advocate on their behalf. Sometimes you've had to give them some harsh truths. I don't think Don McGregor falls in that latter category, but you've been friends with him for a very long time.
Yeah, Don's one of the sweetest guys in the industry. Everybody loves Don. The only people you'll ever hear say anything bad about him were people who gave him a hard time back when he was their writer. He was not an editor's favorite, but he was a fan favorite, and he remains that to this day. But he never got his due. I don't think he was ever properly treated. I mean, it's obvious, and he certainly didn't get enough work. They gave him the shit books, things that weren't selling. They thought that he would die with them. And look what he did with Black Panther. Frankly, he was extraordinary, not just on that book, but on Killraven and on Luke Cage and anything that he touched. Don is a writer's writer. We learn from him. We learn from reading his scripts. And if you've ever looked at any of his original scripts, it was with a director's eye. He was describing everything right down to the angles of shots. Artists like Gene Colan, who he was close with and I was close with, loved him because they would look at something and he would give them creative license, give them room to do what they did. But, he also would help them imagine how a scene was supposed to look. He would lay it out panel by panel. He worked, very well with Rich Buckler as well. And frankly, anybody who worked with Don loved his work. And as a young reader, it was fascinating to me. I mean, there were other writers that I loved, but Don's exposition, not just the word balloons, were small pieces of literature, stuffed into comic books. You couldn't quite figure out how there would even be room for the artwork because he wasn't overwriting, but neither was he being brief. He was really directing your mind, and it was a lot of fun to read him. And I learned a lot from him. Then we became friends, and I got to know him. Don only came to me once for help, and he wasn't really coming to me. Don likes to tell people he's talking to everybody and anybody at the same time, and he was having an eviction problem. I don't know if you recall this. All of a sudden, he was being kicked out of his home, and they'd been there a long time. He had an apartment in Brooklyn, and I don't remember what the financial circumstances were, but I said, "Let me have this." I was pretty certain that a lot of landlords are stupid insofar as they break the law and think that they're going to get away with it. And a lot of them do get away with it, but this one had illegally evicted him. I brought it to a senator's office. I just happened to know a few people, and I sat down with their staff and I said, "We got to fix this," and we did. We contacted their attorneys, and I made it very clear to them that I'm taking this personally, and let's look into how you're treating all your other tenants too. So we saved Don from a pretty horrible situation. He ended up not staying there anyway because he wanted to go, but neither do you want to be ridden out on a rail, with 30 days or
Right.
45 days notice. So that I wouldn't say that cemented our friendship. We were already friends, but that he knew that I wasn't playing games. That if he needed some help, that I was really going to ride in there, and that's my great pleasure. I enjoy doing that. I hate seeing people bullied. And Don's a great writer, but it doesn't mean he knows how to deal with a corporate landlord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if I remember a conversation, I think that we'd had separately from recording, uh, your son, Izzy, who is heck of a musician and singer, is he adapting poetry by Don
So
McGregor into
Don gave
lyrics?
him some stuff to adapt, and it hasn't gone as quickly as. I mean, I want to see everything turn around. I turn things around very quickly, but
Yeah.
the creative process for an 18-year-old serious musician is different than the creative process for an old man like me. And I'm not a musician. I mean, I play guitar, but I'm not a musician. He thinks very differently, so he takes things very seriously. But he is indeed engaged with Don. Don likes him a lot. Don's wife adores him. Um, and yeah, I'm hoping to see that sooner than later. Something.
That is great because then, again, it's focus on too the narrative greatness of Don McGregor. Because I agree with you. I think he's one of those writers that, well, you haven't read anything bad by him, and people just don't. Other than I would say Black Panther, because I know we give a lot of credit to Priest for that run of Black Panther that kind of inspired making the film, but it was really Don McGregor who established this is a very viable with the Panther's Rage series. Well, it was in
He
Jungle
either
Action, right?
created or redefined most of those, not necessarily Black Panther himself, but certainly the villains and the backdrop of what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's another writer that I do want to, quickly talk about because I think another one due for a resurgence. As I go into bookstores occasionally looking for authors that like my own son might enjoy, or just to see like, hey, is this person that I grew up reading and knowing about still there? Is Harlan Ellison. And we are in finally about to see the complete, if you will, trilogy of Dangerous Visions. It's been Dangerous Visions has been reprinted. Again, Dangerous Visions will be in a couple of months, I think, and then September we finally see the last Dangerous Visions, and that's being spearheaded by J. Michael Straczynski, as well as there's a Harlan Ellison greatest hits compendium of his own short stories.
Right.
So, have you had conversations with Joe?
Oh, sure. I mean, I was hoping to be included in the greatest hits introduction team, but didn't happen. Uh, but regardless, no, I know Joe vaguely. We first met at Peter David's home at a party. It's got to be 25 years ago. Um, no, more than that. And we've met. We've corresponded. Harlan couldn't have picked a better guy to protect his legacy and his home and his published work.
Yeah,
Joe takes it real seriously.
and I know, that like you and Harlan were very close. So that the question really is to expound on this is the right time for Harlan Ellison to come back into the consciousness, and why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think he ever should have, frankly, left the country. But look, everything is cyclical. The fact that people don't even really read books anymore is really more of a statement. But if they do start reading books again, I think Harlan will continue to exist in the minds of readers. He will over time be as widely known as Bradbury and Vonnegut and Asimov. Those gentlemen are not better writers, but they're certainly better known by a wider audience. Harlan's fans are legion. There's a reason that people consider him their favorite or their most important writer. He got under people's skin. He got inside of. He wasn't just a great storyteller. He was an enormous personality, and he taught something that actually that Joe points out as well, that writing is requires courage, not just creativity. Which frankly, Don McGregor has a lot of courage too to take on the things he took on. But Harlan was in your face, and I think that once people read him, just once they get a taste of that, it's kind of hard to go back to who you were. You'll always hear his voice a little bit after that. And you kind of tap into your own inner Ellison. And if you haven't read Harlan Ellison, then what I'm saying now has no meaning. But if you have, then you get it. His voice was very important, not just the things he wrote about, but the way he wrote about it.
Yeah. Well, so before we cut, this conversation, because there will be more to talk about the people that you will talk about in your book. Is there any other creator right now that you think we've lost quite a few in the last year? Since last we spoke too. We both Ramona Fraden and Trina Robbins. And is there any other creator that you think is due for some more attention.
Well, I think that Steranko is going to get a resurgence soon. He fell out of favor because of his politics, which is really a shame. I don't know why people feel a need to do that. You can't expect somebody of his age and his generation to align politically with teenagers today. He's seen things that they haven't seen, and consequently, as a result of his politics, he was kind of squozing out. I think canceled maybe a little bit. At least there were certain attempts to do that. But unfortunately, he's now one of the last great pioneers in comics who is due for a lot of attention and due for resurgence. I hope it doesn't come on the back of an illness or him suddenly disappearing.
Right. I mean, that is one that I don't know if people really, well, like newer readers, really understand who came before. It usually is an encomium after they've passed. You're right, when they're sick or or have unfortunately passed away completely. That Then we kind of look and go, oh wow, they were doing some really cool things. I mean,
You didn't hear people talking about Trina,
no,
unfortunately, but what Trina did was extraordinary.
well,
She was, yeah. I mean, she wasn't my favorite writer because I wasn't really reading that kind of thing. But she was, I shouldn't say writer, writer slash. She was outstanding, but she was writing for her audience. She was creating her own audience. She wasn't doing what Marie Severin was doing. Marie was trying to work in a man's world, and Trina wasn't. Trina was trying to create a woman's world to work in, which is pretty
yeah,
cool. It's pretty
yeah.
cool.
Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. And visit fanboyplanet.com for other features, reviews, interviews, previews, and of course, listening to the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.